Mr. Bass.
I don't talk to you.
This is the lesson for Thursday, the 30th of September, 2021, for European history. A few things. First off, if you bring food to my room and there's a mess, clean it up. Second off, tomorrow, I should have the recording up by the time I leave here today. So probably this evening is the earliest you'll be able to see my lesson. I may not get that done, but it'll be up certainly by 8 a.m. Friday. Tomorrow, you need to sign in to the school's online attendance system, just like you did last year. If you don't know how to sign in, ask another person who was here last year, and they'll tell you. Everyone, please make sure you have your notes out and open, something to write on, something to write with. We get the full week of Thanksgiving off because Friday is both teacher training day and a student day. So you've got to be listed as present for the state not to play games with us. So please do sign in tomorrow, watch the video, and comment on it. Make a thoughtful comment. That'll be for tomorrow. For today, I'm going to point, and you're going to say.
Oh.
Yeah.
Holy
Roman Empire.
Okay.
Hungary.
Poland.
Lithuania.
No, the small little dude.
Oh, the small little dude is the East Prussia.
Lithuania.
Muscovy.
Turkey.
Moldavia.
I like Wallachia.
Wallachia.
Ottoman
Empire. Spanish Naples.
Pop stocks.
Papal States. Okay.
Sweden.
Denmark.
Norway. Scotland. England. Wales. Ireland.
Little tiny.
America.
Aragon.
Aragon.
What else? Castile. You got Granada.
Okay. And in Italia, we have a new entry. Down here. And to the east is the Ionian Sea. Ionian Sea. Down here and eastward to Greece is the Ionian Sea. Ionian. Ionian Sea. Jack Bredesen rightly pointed this out to me that I was missing that one.
Wow.
I thought about it and I agreed. I was missing that one. So, Ionian Sea. Good for you. Okay. Mediterranean Sea. Hey, focus in, folks. 3, 2, 1. Good. Island.
Sardinia.
Island. City. 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 Region. Papal State. City. And region. Siena.
Florence.
Genoa.
Milan. Venice.
And the mountains. Good. Very good. You will be expected to know that sometime soon, maybe Monday soon, or later. Probably won't be Monday, but it will be next week sometime. So be prepared. Now, I do not normally do this except during the Renaissance. There are so many people, and the individual is so important, that I have here a list of 21 names that you will have to memorize the definitions of. In addition to the geography, that's a lot of memorization. Then again, if you don't remember the history, what's the point? Now, I will tell you, quite honestly, I, who've been teaching this for a good long time, remember most of these guys, but not all of them. I will have to look them up a couple of times. You take, next to the notes I've already given you on them, any additional notes that you need about this stuff in order to...
You've already given us notes about them?
Look in your notepad.
I'm looking right now. Hold on. Calm down, Jamal.
I'll be mellow when I'm dead.
Teachers get mad at me. I can just say that.
So, we are going to commence this with going over these various people. Okay, John Wycliffe. Wycliffe is an English theological reformer. What it says here is English theologian, lay preacher, biblical translator. Yet he tried to translate the Bible into English. Reformist, dissident, teacher, and, quote, martyr, unquote, who was considered the founder of Lollardy, the Lollard movement. And the Lollard movement was an attempt to move away from the hierarchical church towards a church that was very different. Sort of a halfway step between what the Cathari wanted and what the church was. So here's the story with Wycliffe. You have a man who is preaching and teaching publicly reform ideas at a time when the church views reform ideas as something akin to what we consider to be radioactive. You don't want to get near a reform idea. A reform idea could cause another religious war, peasant uprising, Albigensian crusade. In fact, Wycliffe's ideas, translated through Jan Hus, become the basis of the Hussite Wars, which is one of the biggest peasant uprisings in the history of the Middle Ages and early modern times. So, he wanted to reform the church, move it away from a hierarchical church, and he was burned at the stake as a heretic. He is a martyr to Protestants, who consider the Roman Catholic Church of this time to be too repressive.
How do you spell Protestants?
Protestant.
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 Guarantee you it's somewhere.
Haley. Sip it. Haley.
Yeah.
What?
Oh, great. Okay. What is a... Why are you laughing?
It's funny. Alexander.
What is a lay
Pious.
preacher?
A lay preacher is a person who preaches sermons who is not a priest or a monk or a nun. So if, for example, I were asked by my friend the Presbyterian minister to offer a sermon on the history behind certain religious ideas, that would mean that in that moment I was functioning as a lay preacher. I'm trying to think if John Wesley, the founder of the Wesleyan Protestant Church, was ordained or not. I don't think he was. So lay preachers have done a lot. Francis of Assisi I don't think he was a priest. So in a sense, he was sort of a lay preacher too. Okay, so now you know. Were there any other questions? Anywhere? Yes, yeah.
Was it called the Hussite War?
The Hussite Wars, yeah. And I'll be getting to that when I get to the Jan Hus, who is number 21 on our list.
But it was his ideas who caused it?
Yeah, because Hus was inspired by Wycliffe. Wycliffe, reform ideas, transmits them to Hus. Hus transmits them to the people of the Czech lands, and the Czech lands erupt in rebellion. Okay, Leonardo Bruni. That term, terribly. Leonardo Bruni was an Italian humanist. You know what humanism is? We've talked about it. An Italian humanist.
Enough. Oh, cool.
Ow! Stop touching me.
If you really want to personalize things and humanize them, that's fine. I do not wish to anthropomorphize the heating control, nor do I choose to anthropomorphize my food. In fact, when we were kids and we got lobster, because we lived near where lobster was harvested, occasionally the lobster would be brought home, and while the water was heating, because you dropped the lobster live into the boiling water, the lobster would be put on the floor, and we and whatever pets we had, dogs, cats, whatever, would play with the lobster before we ate it.
Wait, was it dead?
And
No, it was alive. That's why we played with it. What? Well, no. If we were stupid, we got pinched. But we weren't stupid. Because it's under the water, very dangerous. If you're not careful, you can get pinched by a lobster. No, it was more fun not to. Okay. I don't know how we got on that. Italian humanist, historian, and statesman who has been called the first modern historian because he is the one who came up with the tripartite division of historical time: ancient, medieval, modern. Now, think about this. He comes up with ancient history, medieval history, and modern history as divisions. Bruni was writing at the beginning of the modern era. So he is basically saying, this is the dawning of the age of modernity. And he is deciding that up until now, there's the ancient world, which ended with the fall of Western Empire, and there's the medieval world, which is the fall of Western Empire to the fall of Eastern Empire. In other words, the Western Roman Empire falls in 476, the Byzantine or Eastern Roman Empire falls in 1453, and as a result of that, in effect, we are beginning a modern era, a new time. Bruni was an optimist. Because, in fact, he died before the fall of Constantinople. But he was an optimist in the sense that he believed that the world of tomorrow would be different fundamentally from the world of yesterday. So, dividing history into ancient, medieval, and modern. And we are still in modern history. There are several subdivisions to it, but we are still. Miss Anton.
Was Constantinople related to the Naples at all?
No, Constantinople is here, where Europe meets Asia. That's the old capital of the Eastern Roman Empire. Naples, the south of Rome on the Italy's peninsula.
Okay.
Okay. Marcelia Ficino. Barcillio Ficino. Humanist philosopher of the early Italian Renaissance, an astrologer, a reviver of Neoplatonism, which was in touch with every major academic thinker of his day. The first translator of Plato's complete extant works into Latin, his Florentine Academy was an attempt to revive Plato's school. Now, in general terms, the three great Greek philosophers, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Socrates, as you learned last year, isn't even a proper philosopher. He's a teacher. And Socrates' great thing is to ask questions. Socrates believed that the human mind had the ability to reason out most every answer you needed in life. If you ask the right questions, the mind can come up with an answer. So what he would do is ask questions like, why do we worship the gods the way we do? Or why are we proud of our country? Those questions got him killed. He was ordered to exile. He said, no, I'm going to kill myself rather than leave because I'm an Athenian, born and bred, and I'm not going anywhere else. So, in fact, Socrates inspires Plato. Plato is a philosopher. He's a writer. And Plato comes up with various notions of perfect forms. We live, according to Plato, in an echo-reality, a reality of imperfect forms. But somewhere in the universe is the prime universe, of which we have very little in common. In the prime universe, there are perfect eyeglasses. If there are even eyeglasses, because everyone's eyes have perfect vision. There is a perfect stool, a perfect whiteboard, a perfect pen, a perfect head of hair or bald head. Perfection. These are called archetype forms. The archetype forms in Plato's universe are perfection interacting with perfection. The only way that a person can encounter Platonic reality is to do so through the mind's eye, to imagine it, to visualize it. Try to picture what a perfect puppy would be like, and then see that perfect puppy interact with his mom, or interact with people, or interact with a chew toy. Perfect forms interacting cannot be observed, they must be imagined. And Plato writes a book called The Republic, which is his idea extolling a perfected society, a society ruled by a philosopher king. A philosopher king who is trained to think through the consequences of the choices. So the philosopher king would be wisdom personified, where people who are born to lead, lead, and people who are born to work, work. The Platonic society is a society where everyone finds their proper role and fulfills it. It's not democratic in the sense that you don't expect ditch diggers to make national security policy. But it is, according to Plato's ideal, when people fulfill their potential and find the job that they were born to do, society as a whole will be ideal. So his ideal for society is the republic. It is not to be confused with the actual Roman or American republics. I saw a question. Yeah.
What was the book that he wrote was called?
The Republic. Republic. Okay. Well, I didn't say Aristotle yet.
No, I mean Portia.
I wouldn't want to. Go ahead.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just want to clarify, like, so when they say like they're a humanist, because you gave us the definition, the proposition that man is the measure of all things. So,
Yes.
what does that really mean? Like, what do you mean, like the measure of all things? Does it mean they're better?
Do you
than everything
adjudge?
else, or-
Do you adjudge human behavior on the basis of Scripture? If you do, then you are judging man on the basis of God's standards. Or do you adjudge human behavior on the standards of humanity? I'm going to actually give you an example from today. Today, our woke brothers and sisters, those people who are Antifa, anti-fascist, BLM, those people who are the LGBT, whatever, social justice warriors, they all have something in common. They are powerfully angry. They're powerfully angry because we, at one time, our ancestors in these United States had slaves. And after that, our ancestors in these United States had Jim Crow laws keeping blacks as second-class citizens. And they're still powerfully angry because wherever somebody disagrees with them, there is a racist and a white supremacist. They have this ideal that they live in a world where everyone who disagrees with them is stupid and evil. Now, you know how I feel about them, and I just have an opinion. It's not, you may be a budding social justice warrior ready to bring down the power and destroy all nations, and, good for you if that's your thing. I'll oppose you, but that's freedom. Freedom is the ability to pursue your dream. And if your dream is to destroy today's society and produce a utopia in its place, good luck. It hasn't really worked for other people, but who knows? Maybe this time it'll be different. In any event, what they damn us for is for not being perfect. They damn us for not being perfect. Anyone who falls short of their standard of purity is damned, including themselves. If somebody, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, representative from the neighborhood next to my old neighborhood in the Bronx, if she actually uses the term women or men to describe things, as she is a leading social justice warrior, she gets into trouble because her followers say, what does that mean? So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, within the last 2 weeks, uses the term menstruating people to mean women. But she still gets criticism because the assertion of some of her SJW followers is that men can menstruate too. Oh, So, what we are dealing with is the assumption that because we are not perfect, we respirate. We suck and blow mightily. Because we are not pure, the way she would have us or they would have us be pure, that we are scum. The worst scum ever. So, what is happening there is that a standard that is not human is being applied to human beings. There has never been, and I argue, unless you clone and brainwash everyone and plant them with wetware until they become little robots, there is not and shall never be a perfect human society like that. A humanist does not judge people or analyze human behavior on the basis of divinity or on the basis of perfection. A humanist looks at the behavior of actual people and makes the judgments based on that.
It's like their actions?
Yes. And in comparison to most nations on Earth, I'm pretty damn proud of the record of the American Republic. I'm pretty darn proud of these United States and of the Western world in general. There are people who, for example, bemoan the fact that the West conquers the world and colonizes it. I don't. If you look at what was there before, what is there now has trouble, but it has the potential to become something other than a stagnant tribal society locked in a Stone Age outlook. In any case, what do you expect people to do? If I've got guns and they've got spears and they live on land I want, that's human nature. And that's the way the Lakota people viewed anyone who was in the Black Hills before they conquered it. The American Indians waged war for conquest. They had slaves. So did all of the other indigenous peoples. So does everyone before factories have slaves. So the standard that a lot of people use, that because we fall short of perfection and because we had a past that doesn't fit in with present-day narrative, we are horrible people, is a non-humanist point of view. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. I've got to go quick, Haley. And I've got like 2 people that have been constantly asking questions, which is fine as long as I have time for other questions and to get through my lesson.
I have like one question. Okay. Anyway,
For now.
I don't think people understand that if people didn't conquer things, we wouldn't be anything. Like we wouldn't be able to be in school. Like we wouldn't be here.
We wouldn't have gone to the moon. We wouldn't have crossed the Atlantic. We. There would be no we. Because the United States is an amalgam of people from all over the world. We're not united by blood. We're not united by soil. We're not a European country. We are united by the ideals of the Constitution. And there's something that all Americans are obliged to believe in. Obliged, I say. And that is what the Constitution is, what the flag stands for. Every solemn oath taken by military and politicians is to the Constitution. Not to the nation, not to the leader, not to the people, to the Constitution of the United States. Because without the Constitution, we have no freedom. That's it. That's the one thing that's supposed to hold us together. And you can have skin of whatever color, ancestors of whatever background. If you believe in the Constitution, welcome. If you follow our laws, welcome. If you don't, well, then we're going to have a problem. And a lot of our SJW woke fellows do not believe in the Constitution because they say it gets in the way of progress. Well, one man's progress is another man's hell. So, went into interesting realms. Okay, so what you should remember with Ficino is Neoplatonism. Oh, Aristotle. Aristotle is the Greek philosopher is inspired by Plato, who actually was a tutor to Alexander the Great. And Aristotle says, unlike Plato, if you want to understand reality, observe it. Think about it systematically. Aristotle develops the syllogism, which is a 3-part statement of logic. All men are mortal. Socrates was a man, therefore Socrates must have died or must die. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. General principle, specific example, connecting the specific example to the general principle. That's a syllogism. It's a Lego of logic. Aristotle also is the real father of the scientific method. scientific method, as we understand it, is applied Aristotelian philosophy. Aristotle says if you are wondering something about the natural world, make a hypothesis. Then test that hypothesis by designing experiments to measure it. Conduct the experiments fairly and without prejudice. Go where the data leads and develop a theory based on your experimental data and your hypothesis. That's the scientific method. And that is what Aristotle recommended that people do. If you want to understand the behavior of wild boar, then study wild boar. If you want to understand the behavior of butterflies, study butterflies. So, in any event, Neoplatonism for Ficino. Johannes Gutenberg. You all should know this. You've read in a book about Johannes Gutenberg. Does anyone recall? ¿Quién es esto? Yes?
He made the Gutenberg Press.
The Gutenberg Press changes the world. It is one of the most important inventions in the history of our species. Why? Well, the Chinese invent woodblock printing. Instead of writing freehand every page that they want to print and post around a Chinese city, what they will do is carve into a fairly soft wood the characters. Actually, they'll design the characters and they'll carve away the things that are not the characters. So only the characters remain at the level of the surface of the wood. Then you have your paper or whatever it is you're going to be printing it on, and you stamp the the block of wood into some ink, and then you stamp the ink onto the page, and you pull the ink away, and there is that design that you carved. By the way, developing ink that won't stick too much to your printer but will stick to your paper takes hundreds of years. The kind of ink we see in modern pens where you just write and you don't smear everything with your hand, that's an amazing technological development. Since I'm left-handed, I write and then cover my writing with my hand very quickly. And modern ink doesn't smear that much. Back when I was a kid in the 70s, unless I was very careful about the pen I bought, my hand was blue or black by the end of the day. And if I used pencil lead, it was sort of a leady gray. But that's not the printing press. The idea, like so many ideas, migrates across the Silk Road from China to the West. Gutenberg makes a couple of important developments. First of all, Gutenberg does not work in wood. Gutenberg's press uses bronze or brass or copper. Secondly, Gutenberg does not do the whole page. What he does is, since we have a phonetic alphabet with 26 letters plus a bunch of symbols and numbers, is each letter gets its own little piece. And what you do is you plan out your page because you have a bracket, and you layer your printing onto the bracket in opposite, upside down and backwards. And you layer it, and once it's all layered, you screw that together, and then it gets lifted up and pressed onto the ink, and it gets lifted up again. You bring your paper in, cover the ink, and press, and the paper goes through, and press, and the paper goes through, and press, and the paper goes through. When you're done with that page, you take the bracket out, you clean off the letters, you take the bracket apart, you build a new bracket, maybe the next page. It's a completely different page with completely different writing, but it uses the same set of metal letters. With a good set, with a good set of letters and numbers, the Gutenberg Press can produce nearly infinite numbers of books. You will find that in terms of the intellectual history of humanity, there are a few big things. The first big thing was language. When, according to evolutionary theory, we develop our voice box, which is actually the last evolutionary change to make modern humans, a voice box that gives us the ability to sculpt sound, like Michelangelo could sculpt marble. We quickly develop a set of sonic symbols, of sonic sculptures that mean things, because we all agree. Pen, okay, glasses, camera, bald. And with that agreement, We are no longer prisoners in our skull of meat and bone. We can relate meaningfully at a level beyond which even animals can certainly produce those communications. But we human beings, we have spoken language. Okay. Second one of these is writing. And with writing, we can organize information and we can store it and stockpile it. Every contract from ancient Egypt and Sumeria to the present day is written out so that everyone knows the ground rules. You do this for me, I do that for you. That's the quid pro quo, that's the contract. Without writing, you don't have contracts, you don't have advanced economies. Without writing, you don't have the kind of planning necessary to build a pyramid or a ziggurat or a temple or any of that. Without writing, you can't have a complex battle plan. Without writing, you don't remember history. The difference between archaeology and history is writing. Historical time is the time when human beings wrote things down. And if you have a good translator, you can read in the words that were written by a man who lived 5,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago. That's amazing stuff. Truly amazing. So, speaking, writing, and reading. Now we have Gutenberg's press. Gutenberg Press is going to make writing common. Before Gutenberg's press, the Roman Catholic Church developed at a time when people were of the spoken word. There were a few who could read and write, but most people were illiterate. So many church rituals, lovely, wonderful, and true, are developed to compel or to inspire the imaginations and faith of illiterate people. Protestantism develops hand in hand with the Gutenberg Press for a couple of reasons. First off, you will learn that Martin Luther writes in German, that's vernacular, so everyone can read his work. Secondly, Martin Luther's work is printed and distributed widely. The church is not used to that. It's not that what Luther said is fundamentally different from what Wycliffe or Huss said before him, but what Luther said is not able to be controlled by the church because what Luther said is already in print, and there are countless copies spreading throughout the world. The church was not prepared for that. So Protestantism splits the faith because the printing press allows the ideas to be disseminated without the church suppressing them successfully. That's number one. Number two, Protestantism focuses far more on Scripture than Roman Catholicism. I'm not saying that there's a difference in legitimacy. I'm saying that Protestants of the Western tradition, Lutherans, Anglicans, and then the Reformed Christians of John Calvin, Presbyterians, Congregationalists, Wesleyans, Methodists, and so forth, all go to Scripture as the inspired Word of God. And all of them believe in translating the Greek of the New Testament and the Hebrew of the Old Testament into the spoken language of everyday people. And then focusing worship less on sacraments and more on the Scripture and understanding it. Now, both are acceptable, reasonable approaches to understanding and living a Christian life. But the only way that this works for the Protestants and the Reformed Christians is because there are Bibles available to people. And the possibility of printing Bibles in countless languages so that people can read the Word of God themselves and encounter it and struggle with it and try to make sense of it. Because the Bible is not simple, it's very complicated. So the press makes all of this possible. Now, in my lifetime, I have seen the fruits of the third, and we are going into the fourth era. The third era is the era of broadcast passive communications. Radio, television, movies. These communications are made in a central place, and they are distributed. When you watch television, you are passive. Now we have what could be the fourth age: speaking, writing, printing, broadcast. I guess this would be the fifth age. The fifth age would be interactive network computers. Watch your left shoe. It's okay. Interactive networked computers are not something that you sit passively by. You play video games. You play them. You can talk to anyone around the world. You can make movies yourself. You can make television shows yourself. I spend a lot of my free time watching YouTube videos because some of the stuff on YouTube is just incredible. Thoughtful, different, interesting. It's not high production value, but it's thought-provoking stuff. At some point, some genius is going to think that wetware is a good idea. In other words, implanting broadcasting electronics into the human nervous system so that we can access a shared consciousness. If we do that, I predict the worst form of slavery you could possibly imagine. I don't think it's a good idea. But there will be a new type of mind that comes to deal with it. Just as there's a new kind of mind when we start printing things. The last thing I'll say about it for now is this. In the Middle Ages, there were bards. They're also called skalds and troubadours and harlequins. And what these bards do is they travel from place to place as storytellers. And they tell incredible stories from memory. Now, often these stories are in poetical form, in iambic pentameter. For example, when you're reading Homer translated, the best way to read the Iliad or the Odyssey is not as a prose, but as poetry, in iambic pentameter, because, like music, if you are reading something in iambic pentameter, if you are reading something that is written poetically, the rhythm helps you remember. The music of it helps you remember. It's not remembering a bunch of words, it's remembering song lyrics. These bards could remember tens of thousands of lines of text accurately. They had mnemonic techniques, that's memory techniques, M-N-E-N-O-I-C, M-N-E-N-O-N-I-C, mnemonic. I'll tell you one of those techniques now. And as thoughtful young people who need to memorize a lot of things, maybe you'll learn about this yourself and maybe even try it. I don't really operate this way, but a lot of people do. It's called building a memory palace. I learned about it because a Jesuit priest named Matteo Ricci uses it to learn Chinese and go to China and become a court official. And he's the first Westerner to be given permanent access to the Chinese emperor. This happens in the year 1600. So how does a memory palace work? This is a memory palace technique. You may want to write this down or not. Memory palace. Memory palace. P-A-L-A-C-E. It is a mnemonic technique. M-N-E-M-O-N-I-C. You have your glasses? Okay, they're there. Good. Let's imagine I have learned for the first time about John Wycliffe. This is a discrete bit of knowledge, different from all other knowledges. So I am taking it in my hand, and I'm going to picture it as a marble portrait bust of John Wycliffe. I'm going to visualize it in my mind. And as I visualize it, I'm going to imagine everything that I know about Wycliffe, that he was English, that he was a religious reformer, and that he was burned at the stake, and that he inspired Lalardy and the Hussites. Now, in front of me is a big building. It can be a museum, can be a royal palace, can be a skyscraper, whatever it is you want to picture. I picture the American Museum of Natural History in Manhattan, New York City, because when I grew up, we used to go there a lot. We lived close enough so that we could visit it frequently. So I carry the portrait bust of John Wycliffe up the front steps. And in the front gallery, there's this giant Polynesian canoe. And so I pass by the foyer and I go around the canoe. Where am I going to put this? Well, the first floor is fiction and art. And I'm not going to put it there. The second floor, so I start climbing the marble steps past the lobby, is going to take us to the world of fact, the world of knowledge, as opposed to imagination. Now, straight ahead is science, to the left is literature, to the right is history. So I go right into the history wing on the second floor. I pass prehistory, pre-classical river valley civilizations, ancient Greece, ancient Rome, Jewish faith, the Christian faith, the Dark Ages, the High Middle Ages, the Late Middle Ages, Renaissance. Now, Wycliffe can actually be seen as late medieval or Renaissance. I'm going to put him in the Renaissance room. So I go into the Renaissance room, and I look around. And I see the painters, and I see the politics, and I see religious ideas. So I'm going to head towards religious ideas. And in front of the section that has a picture of Erasmus and Jan Hus, there's a space. There's a little pillar. And I place the portrait bust of John Wycliffe on that pillar. I then step back and I memorize, okay, Wycliffe is right in front of the portrait of Erasmus. It's near the portrait of Jan Hus. That's Wycliffe. And then I retrace my steps. I leave the Renaissance religious section, go out of the Renaissance room, go down the history corridor, back to the first floor, and out. Now, what is the point of all this silliness? I'll tell you. By taking the knowledge and objectifying it, by making it into an object that I can see in my mind, it's not going to help me to know it more. It's going to help me recall it better. I have been graced with a good memory, so far anyway. And that means I've remembered a lot. For me, a problem isn't so much knowing something about history. It's recalling it, being able to bring it from the back of my mind where it's stored to the front of my mind where I am dealing with things. The next time I am dealing with religious reformers in the late Middle Ages or Renaissance, I might think, you know what? There's that guy, that English guy, begins with a W. How do I find the knowledge about Wycliffe? There's my memory palace. There's the Museum of Natural History. Climb up the front steps, walk around the canoe, go up the second floor where facts is, go to the history wing, pass all the ancient medieval civilizations. There's the Renaissance room. Go into the Renaissance room. I see the religious figures. I see her in front of Erasmus. There's the Wycliffe. And when I find the Wycliffe, I find the knowledge I have about him. I have stored it purposefully in my mind. That memory palace system works. I have talked to people who used it, but it was very common back before printing. Books was common. People had to develop memory that could remember the real Iliad or Odyssey or story of Beowulf or Song of Roland or whatever epic you're talking, and tell it properly and rightly without error again and again and again and again. And it's not even like you know what you're going to tell. People will say, tell us the story of this, tell us the story of that. And you've got to be able to recall it and then recite it. And that's memory palace is useful for memorization. Putting things to rhyme and meter is also useful. If you ever have trouble remembering a mathematical theorem or a scientific principle, put it to music. Make a little song. Learn the song. Sing the song. I'll bet you'll recall the information more reliably. Or make it into an object and put it in a memory palace of your own. Gutenberg's invention makes all of that unnecessary. To quote Dr. Jones, Indiana's father, from the third Raiders of the Lost Ark movie, no, I don't remember it, Indy. That's why I wrote it down. You write things down to avoid having to remember it. And since writing things down is now possible, and looking things up is now possible, the memory of the bards dies out. It's no longer marketable. It's like a dark age, but just for them, because their particular thing doesn't matter anymore. Books, printed books, make it unnecessary. Why have that kind of memory? Go through all that effort when you can buy a set of encyclopedias. And today, just link into Wikipedia or into Britannica Online. There's going to come a point, actually we've already reached it, where people say that my kind of memory is not useful because you can just look everything you need to know up. I've had teachers, supposedly educated, thoughtful people, tell me, we don't need to teach history anymore because it's all there. All you have to do is open your phone and look it up. They don't understand what history is. They don't understand what it's for. They think it's just about memorization. It's not. History is looking at what people have done with their lives so you can learn what not to do and what to do and who you are. Okay, I suppose that we'll stop things here for today. Thank you for your attention. You may talk quietly amongst yourselves until dismissal.